Hi guys, this is Adam from BitePlay, and today I'm going to compare Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, and Outlast. These two survival horror games were both released within days of one another, share many gameplay traits, and received similar reviews, but after playing both titles, I found the two experiences to be very different, and in this video I'm going to explain those differences to you. I plan to break the comparison down into 4 categories, and ultimately tell you which game I think truly deserves your hard-earned cash. The first category is graphics. There's very little competition here. Amnesia runs on the second version of the HPL engine, which was developed by Frictional Games. Why Frictional, a small developer, has taken the time and resources to write and maintain its own engine is definitely a mystery to me, but that's the course that they've taken. While it isn't a particularly sophisticated or capable engine, it gets the job done, and Amnesia is a fine-looking game, no doubt. However, without spoiling anything, I will say that I think its limitations made one scene in the game slightly less dramatic and impactful than it could have otherwise been. Otherwise, the game looks quite good, despite not being able to hold up to the standards set by most other AAA titles. Outlast, on the other hand, runs on Unreal 3, and I must say, it looks fantastic. It is, without a doubt, the best looking horror game I have ever played. The lighting effects are great, the textures are solid, the environments are detailed, character models aren't amazing, but they still blow those of Amnesia out of the water. Overall, it's a great looking game, especially by horror standards, and easily the winner of this category. For those who played the first Amnesia game, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, the gameplay in A Machine for Pigs will feel very familiar. With the help of journal entries and notes found scattered about the map, players must solve basic puzzles while avoiding lurking monsters in order to progress through the story. This puzzle gameplay sounds great in concept, but unfortunately, none of the puzzles are particularly clever or difficult. No puzzle will provide the player with a satisfying aha moment upon completion, and many are laughably easy. Thankfully, however, I didn't run into any frustrating or unintuitive puzzles, nor was I forced to grind through any annoying fetch quests during my playthrough of the game, which I believe is commendable. A Machine for Pigs never felt tedious or frustrating, which is a big plus. Sadly, Outlast gameplay is really no better. The gameplay starts by presenting a sequence of fetch quests, and when I say fetch quests, I'm referring to mission objectives like, go find a keycard to get through this door, or go turn on 3 generators to restore the power. Some gamers might not mind this type of level design, but I strongly dislike it. I consider it to be lazy, tedious, and uninspired. Worse yet, time forces the player to replay the entire sequence, which can become frustrating and lessen the sense of horror. It's also frustrating that in some cases, when the objective involves passing through an environment unnoticed by the dangerous inmates, it's often possible for the player to take flight and ditch the enemy with little to no effort. Thankfully, when the gameplay comes together, it really delivers, and there are some very exciting moments. Ultimately, I think Outlast is at its best when it's just shepherding the player through very tightly scripted, horrifying events. Given that neither game greatly impressed me, I'm going to call this category a tie. Personally, I preferred Amnesia's gameplay most of the time, but because Outlast really delivers on occasion, this is, in my opinion, a draw. Alright, I suspect that many of you probably only decided to watch this video to have this question answered, so let's talk about it. Which game is scarier? The way I see it, there are 2 ways in which a game can scare the player, generally speaking anyway. The first is by terrifying the player with environmental threats and jump scares. This is the type of horror that makes players scream and pause the game, or feel panic as enemies chase them through corridors. When most people talk about how scary a game is, I suspect this immediate type of horror is what they're referring to. And when it comes to these type of scares, Outlast is the clear winner. Even though certain enemies and jump scares can begin to feel somewhat predictable, Outlast will keep you on edge constantly with intense chases and jump scares. Sadly, A Machine for Pigs can't compete with Outlast or its predecessor in this respect. Unlike the original Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs no longer features the sanity mechanic, allowing players to hide in the dark as long as they like. This makes outwitting enemies much easier. To make matters worse, the game also equips the player with a powerful light that never runs out of fuel. These modifications, combined with less scary enemies, result in a horror experience that's actually relatively tame, which is something I never thought I'd say about an Amnesia game after playing The Dark Descent. Thankfully, Amnesia does deliver in the second category of horror. This category that I'm referring to is a less immediate type of horror. It attacks the player psychologically and emotionally. This is a type of horror that plays with your mind and gives you nightmares. Outlast attempts to tackle this psychological type of terror by presenting the player with copious amounts of gore and showing disturbing events. For example, in one scene, the player has to watch a man burn to death. This approach definitely left me feeling sick to my stomach at parts, but Amnesia left a stronger, longer-lasting impression on me. Without spoiling anything, Amnesia tells a dark story that really made me feel terrible at certain points. The environments make it clear that something has gone terribly wrong, and as the plot unfolds, the game becomes very sad, unsettling, and sometimes even nauseating. Though I found this brand of psychological horror to be very impressive, I have to declare Outlast the winner of this horror category. It made me jump out of my seat on multiple occasions, and it was so intense that I had to take frequent breaks while playing. For horror junkies looking for an adrenaline rush, Outlast is definitely the game for you. Amnesia's strongest element is without a doubt its story. True to fictional style, A Machine for Pigs tells a heavily Lovecraft-inspired tale of forbidden knowledge, cruel fate, and the dark side of the modernist era. The story is told through notes scattered about the map, and cryptic telephone calls made to the protagonist as he ventures deeper into a twisted machine. While the pacing isn't perfect, and certain elements of the plot were a tad predictable, I thoroughly enjoyed Amnesia's story and atmosphere, and many elements really stuck with me. Outlast's story, while very competent, is not quite on the same level, but I was pleasantly surprised by how nicely it came together. At first, the story appeared to be a half-baked commentary on corporate greed, which seemed to be there for the sole reason of propping up the somewhat absurd notion that an investigative journalist would break into a sinister insane asylum alone. Thankfully, as the plot progressed, it became much more interesting, and the ending was really quite a surprise. Still, this category easily goes to Amnesia. The depth of Amnesia really took me by surprise, and it definitely deserves recognition. So, after examining these 4 elements of the 2 games, which one comes out on top? In this case, the 2 experiences were very similar in quality, but catered to different tastes. As such, I'm going to have to recommend both games based on how closely your interests align with the game's strengths. If you're hoping to be constantly scared and startled, Outlast is definitely the game for you. It's probably the scariest game I've ever played, and possibly even scarier than the legendary Amnesia: The Dark Descent. The slick visuals add to the experience as well, and the story is entertaining. If you're looking for a more cerebral, intellectual game experience, Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs is probably the better choice for you. If you have the patience to read the notes scattered across the map, you'll be rewarded with a thematic, dark, and compelling story, and you'll probably feel a bit frightened at some points in the game too. At the end of the day, I recommend both games, and ideally, if you have the money, check out both experiences. Thanks for watching. For more tech and gaming related videos, feel free to subscribe to BytePlay, and our Twitter links are posted in the description.